Okay, hello and welcome back. This time we're going to talk about why should I be moral. My name is Nausicaa and I'm a moral philosopher. Now if this doesn't mean anything to you, you need to go back and watch the What is Philosophy video and What is Morality, what is Moral Philosophy video. But for the rest of you, you now know that philosophy is about thinking about things, reflecting about things, creating arguments, and most importantly asking why questions. Everything gets questioned. Why this? Why that? Why the other? I don't know if some of you have young children. Most young children go through this really annoying phase where they start saying, why? Why mummy? Why mummy? Why mummy? And if you're particularly unlucky, they say, but why mummy? But why mummy? But why mummy? All day long and for most of the night. Philosophers are pretty much young children in that phase of life. They just continue saying, but why? But why? But why? And they are equally annoying. You know when you get to the stage where you want to turn around to your kid and say, because I said so, and I'm going to throttle you if you ask why again. Well, people can feel that way towards philosophers. And in fact, possibly the world's most famous philosopher, Socrates, is quite well known for the end of his life as well as what he did during his life. Because he spent his entire life asking why questions and embarrassing people who thought that they knew things, but when faced with a why question, discovered that they didn't actually know anything. They found themselves looking quite foolish because they couldn't answer Socrates' why questions. He annoyed his fellow citizens so much that they sentenced him to death, and they actually did. Well, they didn't throttle him, but close enough. They made him drink poison and die. So, yes, beware, this may happen to you if you turn into a philosopher. Why questions can be really annoying. And I'm a moral philosopher. That means I'm interested in questions that have to do with a particular way in which we behave, a certain type of beliefs, desires, reasons, actions, consequences that have to do with morally right and wrong conduct. That is the kind of conduct that we tend to praise or blame, the kind of conduct that we hold people responsible for, the kind of conduct that we judge people for. Okay, that's a little preamble. I now owe you the homework from the last video. For those of you who saw the What is Morality video, right at the end, I gave you a little story and I asked you to think about moral aspects of this story. Which bits in that story made you think about moral type of questions? Yeah? The reason we did that is because morality is not always obvious to everybody. Sometimes we need to be sensitized to the way in which the world provokes moral reactions in us. Sometimes we behave in a way and it's only afterwards when we think about it that we realise that this may have been a moral dilemma. And especially for people who are introduced to new areas of inquiry, students who are becoming engineers, students who are becoming doctors, they discover that within that profession there's a set of values that generates particular kinds of moral problems. So very often students need to be sensitized to the way the world is with respect to the morality of that particular endeavour, their profession, whatever it is that they're doing. Okay, so what were the moral ideas in my story? You may have come up with your own, that's perfectly fine. That's because the story was hopefully sufficiently complex to generate loads of different ideas. But one of the first one was, I think the very first, here I've made some notes this time so I don't forget my questions, yeah. One of the very first ideas was that I had to put my kids in front of a screen in order to come and record this video. So here we have a potentially moral issue. Should I have allowed my children to watch tablets? Now to make this argument, we have a first claim, which is that parents ought to do what is best for their children, act in their best interest, make the kind of decisions that benefit their children. Yeah, and this is an argument that you would have to support separately. And then we have a claim about tablets. What does screen time do to children? Now, I've told you that philosophy isn't about facts, but that doesn't mean that facts are irrelevant to philosophy. And here is an example where a fact of the matter is important to our argument. If screen time causes harm to children, then coupled with the idea that I ought to do what is best with my children, the conclusion is that I was wrong to put my children in front of a screen in order to come and talk to you. But flip the fact on its head and say that we now found out that there is no harm to be had from unlimited screen time for children. then I haven't done anything wrong, and my children, it was perfectly permissible to allow my children to sit in front of a screen. So facts of the matter and determining them may form part of arguments and may change the type of conclusion that we have. Okay, then a second big question was the question of my work versus my responsibility towards my children. What counts as a fulfilling life? And how do you balance different kinds of obligations, especially when they pull against each other? It is actually quite difficult to have an academic career if you want to spend sufficient time with your children as well. Almost every parent who works has felt this pull. And the parents who don't work may equally feel that they're missing out on an aspect of their lives and their way of being fulfilled. So what is the sort of balance that you owe to yourself and to others, and what kinds of activities come together to form a good life, a good moral life that you ought to lead? I'm not giving you answers, I'm just raising these types of questions just to give you an idea of how these questions are raised in ordinary circumstances. The third thing, I told you the video is going to be freely available. Now that's a moral choice as well. I could have chosen to sell these videos for a lot of money. I'm sure I would have made a lot of money out of selling them. I could have chosen to charge a fee and give it to charity. I could have chosen to give them out freely available to everybody. Underlying this are ideas about what is the purpose of education and what is the obligation of educators towards their students. Should education be freely available to everybody who wants to access it, or should there be some barriers to education? And what kind of barriers should we put to education? Should we just make sure that those who are able to are allowed to continue with their education, or should there be barriers as well that are financial? Only those who can pay can continue with their education. And what is the role of the state in all of that? This is a massive topic, especially if you're one of the people who have to pay for higher education in the country where you're at. Now, the next thing, I told you that my first video had only had 2 views. It's now had 5 views. Rejoice, people. That might make you question the whole futility of what it is that I'm doing. Should you keep doing something if there's nobody there to watch it? This is a big question for academics, because often a lot of what we do is not read by anyone, is not seen by anyone. Are you an author if nobody reads you? What is the purpose of your life if the ideas that you have are not actually shared by anybody else and are not of interest to anybody else? And how important is it when you engage in intellectual pursuit to be recognized for those ideas? These are really big questions about the meaning of life. Now, in the end, the whole story became rambling, and you might have thought, what is she on about? This is not even a story. That was a little bit on purpose, because this is what life can be like. It won't always be easy for you to see what the moral aspects of a situation are, and they won't always be out there flashing in neon lights. They could be mingled with all sorts of other kinds of questions. We saw that legal questions might be different from moral questions, and questions of etiquette or cultural ideas may be mingled in. And all of that could be part of a package, so it's not quite easy to see what the moral aspect is. Okay, that much by way of introduction. That was your homework. Now, why be moral? When I teach morality, the first few introductory topics, I'm always quite impressed with this idea of morality as a force. You remember, you see the children dying in the fire, you can open the window and you suddenly feel that you should open the window. And a lot of my students say that they don't always feel that way, that actually it's not very convincing, this kind of argument. That yes, they would probably save the children because it's really easy, but in reality there are many other considerations. And the question, why should I bother, crops up quite a lot. Why not do what is best for me? Morality seems to be about other people, about sacrificing your interests, putting yourself at risk, doing what other people require. But why? Why should I do what other people want? Why shouldn't I do only what is good for me? And unsurprisingly, there is a moral theory that claims that this is what morality is and what morality should be. Philosophers hold pretty much any theory under the sun because we like looking at ideas. No idea is simply rejected. Even the wildest ideas are considered before they're rejected. So this one is called ethical egoism. By the way, for our purposes, morality and ethics are exactly the same thing. Don't worry about these 2 terms. They mean exactly the same thing. So ethical egoism, is a moral theory. So it says, I should do what is best for myself. And this is true of everybody. Every single person should do whatever is best for them. Right? That's why it's an egoistical theory. Yeah, focuses on the self. And part of the theory is also the claim that all I can do is what is best for myself. That means that our psychological makeup is such that we want to do what is best for ourselves. This is how we're made up, and this is how we are really. There's no other choice. Do you see here we have a moral claim about what I should do, underpinned by an empirical claim about how things are. That by nature we are selfish, egotistical types of beings. Now, the very first question is this empirical claim true? And a lot of people have spent a lot of time just on the empirical claim. Is it true that we are egotistical? Is it true that we don't actually act from altruistic motives that are purely focused on benefiting other people and have no benefit whatsoever or even potentially harm for ourselves? Where does this come from? There are arguments about our biological evolution and psychological evolution and how all of these things may have shaped us in a particular way. Some people are arguing that we are fundamentally egoistical, and some people are arguing that altruism is part of our evolutionary makeup. So there is a question of fact here. But let us for a moment assume that it is true that there is an underlying disposition to do things for ourselves, and see whether we should therefore give in to this disposition. What we're doing here is we're allowing the position that we want to develop to have the strongest possible beginning. It's very easy to take a very silly idea and show what it is, why it is silly. But we haven't achieved much because we started from something silly anyway. So it's always worth making your opponent's idea as strong as possible and then showing why it doesn't work, because then you've really achieved something. Okay, so let us assume that there is some merit to the idea that naturally we think of ourselves, that naturally psychological egoism has a basis in some of our biology, evolution, or factual answers about our nature, and ask, even if that is the case, should it be the case? Yeah, remember, should questions are different from can questions. Just because we can do something doesn't mean that we should do it. And for ethical egoism to be right, we need to be able to motivate the should argument, not just the can argument. Okay, I want you to imagine that you're taking some really, really important exams. These exams are going to determine your future. Something very, very important like the final year exams of your university education, or something similar, something that will get you into the job that you want to do for life. And you have the opportunity to cheat. Should you do it? Take a moment here to think about it and see what your first reaction is. If you can, pause the video and go ask the same question of loads of other people. As soon as they give you the answer, ask them why. Why have they decided to cheat or not to cheat? Especially the ones that tell you that they would not cheat, ask them why. Okay, hopefully you've spoken with a couple of people, and hopefully they've told you these kinds of things. I wouldn't cheat because I might get caught. I wouldn't cheat because the people around me would know that I had cheated, even if I didn't get caught. Now, if they say this kind of things, reassure them that this would never happen. Block off all these little practical objections. You can cheat with immunity. No one will know, ever. Absolutely guaranteed. If you like, add to the story that there is a magical ring, and once you put your magical ring on, you can do the cheating and be absolutely certain that no one will ever find out. You will never suffer any repercussions from this. And then see what people say. Would their opinion change? Would they cheat now? Okay, go back, talk to your friends, think about it yourselves. See what happens when you add these extra explanations. And now see if people still think that they wouldn't cheat. Can we add something else. Let's say that you were preparing for your exams and then the lockdown came to your country, so you didn't have access to your normal educators or the place where you went to learn about these exams, and you didn't have access to the books. So you have been severely disadvantaged. Let's say you live in an area where internet reception isn't very good, so loads of other students from your class were able to access these things, and you were disadvantaged in this way. The cheating would now allow you to go back to the footing where you would have been had it not been for the lockdown. So the cheating now is a way of redressing the balance, of making up for all these factors that actually made it more difficult for you to do well than anybody else. Would you cheat now? Let's add some more to the cheating. Let's say that actually you're a brilliant student, you would have passed these exams very well, but unfortunately you had a coronavirus recently, and while you're no longer contagious, you're feeling quite poorly, you're still in week, 3 or 4, very weak, very tired, and when you go to do your exam, you don't do the best you could have done. Had you taken the exam at any other time, you would have been really good, but on this occasion, you were not able to do as well as you would have done. And that seems a little bit unfair, doesn't it? Because it was because of the virus that you didn't do well, not because of your abilities and of your knowledge. Is the cheating justified now? Do you see what I'm doing? I'm pushing you to cheat. I'm trying to take away all the possible objections that you could have had to get you to cheat. And now imagine that you could keep this magical ring on, and you could effectively cheat your way through your entire life. Not just the exam. Let's say the exam makes you a doctor. And then the ring makes sure that you get away with everything as a doctor. If you make mistakes, the mistakes are attributed to somebody else. If you harm patients, nobody realizes it was your fault. Let's go a little bit further. If somebody else makes a great discovery, it's attributed to you. Let's say you're the first doctor to develop a cure for coronavirus, and then you go on to develop a vaccine for coronavirus. But none of it is truly you. It's all down to the ring that you're wearing. Yeah, the magical ring makes it the case that everything good is attributed to you, even though you don't deserve it, and everything bad is suffered by somebody else, even though you caused it. So now you become a famous doctor. You're well known around the world. Millions of people admire you and are thankful and grateful to you for what you did, even though you didn't actually do it. And you get the Nobel Prize for Medicine. You're recognized in your career. You meet this lovely man, this man who admires you because of who you are and how you've sacrificed your life for other people, and he falls in love with you. And the basis of the love and the relationship is how he sees you as this wonderful doctor who's so intelligent and so caring and has managed to do all these wonderful things for other people, which, remember, you haven't actually done. It's the ring who has done everything for you. So you marry this wonderful person you've met who admires you and loves you so much, but the basis of the relationship is always the ring. And everything about the relationship is fixed by the ring. It's not truly you. Is this a life worth living? Stop here and have a think about it. This is a life where you get everything you want. You can add any details here. If money is important to you, add the detail that you made billions from your vaccine, from coronavirus vaccine. It doesn't really matter. You can add whatever you want to this life. Just make sure that all of it is attributed to the ring and not truly to you. Yeah. So you have a life where you have absolutely everything you want, but none of it comes truly from you. All of it comes from the magical ring. Is this a life worth living? Is this the life that you ought to have? Have a think about this and see what you think. It's best to pause the video here. If you can, go back and discuss it with all the people you discussed the cheating example with and see what they think. How many people would want to live this kind of life? Okay. For those of you who are familiar with the matrix, you might have realized that this is a common philosophical example that is used sometimes in films and in other areas to stimulate people's imagination. In the matrix, it's not a ring, it's a constructed reality. We go one step further. The way all the things that you did with a ring on are not really down to you, yeah? We can now make the entire world to be an illusion. What happens in the matrix is that people are not actually experiencing the things that they're experiencing. They're not writing exams, not qualifying as doctors, they're not discovering vaccines, they're not meeting the love of their lives. But all of it is a computer simulation that's being controlled by somebody else. So none of the experiences are real. And yet they're pleasurable. And maybe someone could guarantee that absolutely everything you experienced while being in the matrix would be positive. Everything would be lovely. In fact, I think there's a character in the Matrix who asks to go back in with a guarantee that his life would go well and he'd only eat juicy steaks and meet lovely people and have a good time. And he doesn't mind that the whole thing would be fake. Does it bother you that the whole of your life is fake if the whole of your life is pleasant? Remember, according to ethical egoism, what matters is benefiting myself. A fake life would benefit yourself, especially if it was a guaranteed good life. Only good things happen to you when you were in the matrix. But does it really matter that none of it is real? There are 3 arguments that argue that it does matter and that you really need to experience things for yourself rather than be in a pleasure-producing experience machine that stimulates you to feel these things that are not actually real. The first one is that doing matters. Do you remember I told you you're not stones? Yeah? Stones are here. Stones do nothing. And you are an agent. You do things, and these things are an expression of who you are. To cheat is an expression of who you are and a decision that you made to cheat. I pushed you towards cheating by giving you excuses and justifications. Do you realize right at the beginning I just said, would you cheat? And then I said, would you cheat if you could get away with it? So I protected you from the consequences and the judgment of others. And then I said, would you cheat if you hadn't been able to revise for your exam because of unjust conditions? So I'm giving you an excuse to cheat here. That means there's a whole story behind this action. By being in the experience machine, we cut away who we are from what we do. None of it really matters because none of it is really happening. In the experience machine, when you marry your boyfriend, the person who admires you, you haven't really done any of that. You haven't really committed to that person, and that person hasn't really committed to you. When you're wearing the magical ring, your husband loves you, but he doesn't love you because he doesn't know who you are. It's the ring that's brought about these things, and it's not you who have expressed yourself through your actions. So for a lot of people, the doing matters, and the fact that it is me doing it matters. So for example, for me, it wouldn't be sufficient to be recognized for a book that I had not written. Suppose I found a magnificent philosophical manuscript hidden away in the attic of my house, and I knew that the author had died a long time ago and I could claim it as my own, and I could finally have philosophical fame and be recognized for the amazing philosopher that I am. That just simply wouldn't be good enough for me, because it wouldn't be my book and my ideas, and therefore it wouldn't be my recognition. The doing matters. Also, the being matters. Yeah? For a lot of people, being the kind of person who does these things is significant. Yeah? How you behave is important. We don't have just the experience. You might say, I want to climb Everest, for example. If you're in the experience machine, it will feel like you climbed Everest, but you won't actually have done it. You will only feel like you have done it, but you will know that you are not a person who actually climbed Everest. And even if you don't know you're within the experience machine because you've been given a medicine to forget that you're in the experience machine, somehow the whole thing is not genuine. And the genuineness of our experience is important. Think about if you've ever had a relationship that you thought was based on one thing and you found out it was based on something else. Imagine you thought you were with someone because he loved you, but it turned out he was with you because he wanted your money. That is an enormous shock to the system, because it means that what you thought was your reality was not actually true. Everything you thought was real and important is completely distorted. So it's kind of important to us to know the deep reality of what is happening and not just the superficial illusion of maybe something that gives us pleasure but isn't real. Okay, all this is quite complicated. Are you still with me? The conclusion is, why should I be moral? The answer is because it matters in itself. That thinking that everything is only about me distorts the value of the experiences themselves. We have more in us than just this urge to do what is good for ourselves. And there are things that inherently matter to us because they are about other people. Take friendship. We were discussing friendship right at the beginning when we discussed what is philosophy. You cannot make sense of friendship if you think about it egoistically. If you think about friendship as something that only benefits you and something that you only want because it only benefits you. Sorry about the noise, that's the 5-year-old going for the Nintendo Switch. Hopefully he'll take it and be gone. Okay. Can you not make loads of noise because I'm doing a video? Okay. To have a friendship which is only about you misses the point that friendship is a relationship that's based on how it works between the two people, how you feel towards the person, and what reasons you have to behave in the best interests of the other person. To discover that somebody who was your friend is only in it for themselves and doesn't value you at all is to discover that you did not have a friendship in the first place. So fundamental ways about how we think about our relationship with others are other regarding. They're not just self-benefiting. And fundamental ways about how we think about ourselves have to do with taking responsibility for what we do and not simply having this blanket idea that benefit always comes to us, that we always win. That doesn't seem to be the most important thing in agency and responsibility. And this is captured every time anybody speaks about these magical rings. Think about the One Ring to rule them all. It gives you all the power, but it also dooms you. It brings the wearer into darkness and evil. You have everything you want, and paradoxically, you discover this is the least thing that you should ever want. Okay, we're going to stop there. I know this one was quite tough going. There were a lot of ideas there. It might take a little bit of a while for you to think through these things. And next time we'll do an even tougher one, I'm afraid. Next time we'll look at why morality is not all relative. This is a really difficult idea, but I think it's quite important to understand what it means and what are the objections against the idea that all of morality is relative, just to then kickstart more of what ethical theories try to do when they try to give answers to moral problems. Okay, I shall see you next time. Bye-bye.